Hello, everybody, and welcome to another top 10 edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day. And check out our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. Check out our Altar Sleeve, support the show by using the code MAGICMICS to check out for 5% off anything in that wonderful store. I am Evan Earl, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, MTG Nerd Girl,
Hey guys, welcome back.
Ruben Bressler.
Hey, how's it going?
Well, everything is lovely. We're here recording a brand
Great.
new top 10 episode. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that said, we also begin with our choice of the top comment from the last show in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most eloquent in letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our retro top 10 Zendikar cards. Ruben?
Well, I was telling the folks during the pre-show, we had some excellent entries, and not just some. We had like a dozen comments across our platforms where I was like, this could win. This is a winnable comment. So I sort of distilled and filtered this down to the card that the most people commented. This was the popular vote. And then someone who I made sure had never won before. And so this week's winner is Plasma Wisp 18. Who writes, one of the biggest omissions is loved by casuals and competitive players alike. It has the perfect stats of 2-3, with the best keywords of flying, lifelink, and death touch. It always seems to trade for a lightning bolt, but Vampire Nighthawk holds a special place in my heart as one of the best uncommons ever printed.
And remains one of the best uncommons ever made at 2 black and 1 generic mana. It's a 2-3 uncommon Vampire Shaman with flying, death touch, and lifelink. This card was like... This card blew my mind. I was just like, we've never had this kind of rate before. And Wizards is like, well, you got Lightning Bolt, so we can make really sweet 3 toughness creatures. And this is where they went to it.
Yeah, I had it on my short list, but I ended up removing it because it's not like you see it a ton in Constructed, but it is one of my favorites. Anytime I see a Vampire Nighthawk in Limited, I always get very excited, and it definitely makes me lean into black pretty hard.
Yeah.
Because it's so good. It's
insane.
Crazy good.
Absolutely insane. It often will just put the brakes entirely on any aggressive start out of a red-based deck. Step Lynxes can't really attack past it unless you have a fetch land. It's just spectacular.
Yeah, card is absolutely fantastic. And we do appreciate Plasma Wisp 18 being part of the show. Please contact us on Twitter. Our Twitter DMs is our favorite and best way to get you your prize. Thanks again to CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring this giveaway. And stay tuned for our top 10 list this week, and maybe you can win next week's free gift certificate, because we're talking about our top 10 Planeswalkers on Arena. This is a good way to not just default to Liliana and Jace and friends and say, hey, what about some of the more modern Planeswalker designs? There were a total of 168 options, which is plenty of options. That said, my first 2 picks will be higher on somebody else's list. And Nerd Girl, do you have a number 10?
I do not. It is my first hire.
Well, Ruben gets to start us off here at number 10.
I'm excited for my list because I wanted to focus specifically on, as we were talking about a lot, what you can do with Arena, what specifically you can do in the digital space instead of, necessarily just putting paper cards online and vice versa. And my number 10 is a perfect example of this. And it features a character who, Magic has a complicated relationship with this character. They put him on the shelf for a little while, but then they brought him back. He's an exciting dude. And so they've sort of glommed back onto Garruk as a character with Garruk Wrath of the Wilds. Garruk Wrath of the Wilds is a 4-mana planeswalker that comes in with 4 loyalty. Okay, sure. +1, choose a creature in your hand. It perpetually gets +1/+1 and perpetually gains, it costs 1 less to cast. -1, draft a card from the spell book. This card's spell book, and put it onto the battlefield. And -6, until end of turn, creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample. Most of the cards in Garruk spellbooks are creatures of various kinds, things like Underdark Basilisk or Sylvan Brush Strider, but you can get the occasional non-green creature thing, something along the lines of like Garruk's Uprising.
Yeah, a lot of those cards are things that you would maybe see in draft. Like, you wouldn't necessarily put these in your deck, but they're definitely great to have for free. Sort of like how a lot more modal cards became playable because they took the place of lands. So I liked that it kind of didn't. It's a unique ability, but they didn't pack it full of power with cards that you would have seen in Standard or in Alchemy anyway. So I think that that's a nice touch.
Yeah, I think ultimately they have there's sort of the trope of digital card games and the pick three mechanic kind of like was expected to get here eventually. You know what I mean? The pick something, pick two, pick three. And for me, getting a 3 power or 3 mana creature, 2 mana creature, depending on what you're snagging here. I mean, there's 14 options. And it just makes cards that much more interesting and formats that much more interesting when you see all of these different creatures, so you're not playing the same game over and over, which is ultimately, I think, what Alchemy is wanting to do. So that card is dope. And as your number 10, Ruben, do you have a number 9?
I do have a number 9. And something else that you can do with Arena is make cards that you want to see play slightly better so that they actually will see play. And that's what they did with Tyvar Kell. Tyvar Kell was printed as a 4-mana planeswalker that enters with 3 loyalty and ultimates at 6. The Arena version comes in with 4 loyalty and ultimates at 7. So it gives you that extra boost, gives you that extra bonus. I just like it, I like that they can do little tiny tweaks and they can do that kind of stuff. Tyvar Kell is another 4 mana, 4 loyalty green planeswalker. Has the ability, just the plain passive ability, elves you control have tap, add a black. It also has +1, put 2 +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target elf. Untap it, it gains Death Touch till the end of the turn. Pay 0 mana, pay 0 loyalty, get a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token, and then of course -7, you get an emblem with whenever you cast an elf spell, it gains haste until the end of the turn, and you draw 2 cards.
Selfishly, I like these kinds of planeswalkers because they are so specific that they keep the limited environment healthy. Like when the planeswalkers aren't just insta-win game bombs, I feel much happier with my day-to-day gameplay. But yet they still kind of find a home, like in a very specific deck. Now, this one maybe not, but maybe some other planeswalkers we'll talk about later do. I think that these are cool designs that keep both sides happy.
And I think that's ultimately sort of what you kind of have to do. We've lived through the era of, it protects itself, it kills a thing, it does some cool ultimate. Was like the default planeswalker design for many, many years. And they've just been branching out slowly with static abilities and effects that happen, or things that happen that you only get once, or, phasing out of Kaito, stuff like that, where, this is the elf planeswalker. It is clear, and there may be more that we talk about, but this is definitely one of the elf planeswalker. You play it with elves, that's what you do, and you don't just jam it into your green limited deck and auto win. It's still a good card for limited, but this isn't like some, oh my god, I can't beat this card, like most sort of generically powerful ones are. So,
yeah.
All right, let's move on here to Nerd Girl's number 9. What you got?
I do have a number 9. This is kind of an interesting card. I feel like it sees some play, and it's a very unique design, but it doesn't often get played as a planeswalker, even though it technically is. We're going to talk about Valki, God of Lies.
Ooh.
Valki is a flip or modal card. On its main face, it is just a 2-mana 2/1 god creature that says Valki enters the battlefield, each opponent reveals their hand. For each opponent, exile a creature card they revealed this way until Valki leaves the battlefield. For X mana, you can choose a creature that is exiled with Valki with converted mana cost X, or with converted mana cost X, and Valki becomes a copy of that card. This is 2 mana. You can, however, pay it for the backside, 7 mana, 5 colorless, black, and a red for Tybalt. I love the flavor of Valki. Tybalt actually being so good. He is a 7 mana, 5 loyalty planeswalker. The +2 ability says exile the top card of each player's library. -3, exile target artifact or creature. -8, exile all cards from all graveyards. Add 3 mana. And he has the static ability that says you can play cards exiled with Valki, which is just kind of insane. He's a little expensive, but because you have that flip side, I feel like it gives you that flexibility.
Change the way cascading works because it was so powerful.
Yeah, you definitely get what you pay for with this card. the front side being Mesmeric Fiend with 2 power that, later in the game, if you want to turn it into a flyer or whatever it is you took from your opponent, spectacular. Backside, 7 mana, immediately jump up to 7 loyalty and technically kind of just draw 2 cards is insane also. It also has a removal ability. If you get to untap with Tibalt Cosmic Imposter, it's very difficult to lose.
It is incredibly difficult to lose. I think I've lost like once, and that was where I was already crazy behind and so on.
Yeah.
But
it's insane. It's especially insane because you can -3, exile the biggest threat on the other side of the board, and then even if they kill Tibalt, you can still just cast what you exiled. Yeah. You can still just take whatever it is they just took.
Yeah, from that emblem does not go away. It's funny, as you mentioned, Nurgle, about the transformation and how powerful and sort of cool and fun that is. Like, I know we're trending there, and it's going to be absolutely awesome to turn Bruce Wayne into Batman on the other side. It's just, It's going to be so cool. One day.
I will say that Magic has always had a story. There are lore buffs that love Magic's story, but I will say in the last year and a half or so, I'm not a lore buff. I don't actually know anything about completion, the Leon. Like, I don't know anything. But the story has been translated into cards a lot better in the last year and a half that it gets me excited. Seeing this transformation of Valky and into Tibalt, like, he was in disguise and stuff. Like, I get that flavor without having to go be a lore nut. And I love it.
Absolutely.
Don't make us be lore nuts. Got it.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's the story. It's like peppering it in for those of us who aren't, and we still get some of that, which I love.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that was Nerd Girls number 9. Let's move on here to number 8. And I finally have one, so I might as well talk about it. This card is sweet. This card is digital only because it kind of had to be. The original Tasha that was printed in Commander Legends 2 has a bunch of stuff for Commander that they can't really care about. So they created an all-new Tasha Unholy Archmage. And this card is a house. This card is an actual factual. If you've not played against this card, it is bananas. Like, it is ridiculous. It's so nutty that this first ability that I want to explain, that if she dies, if you kill her with the hero's downfall or whatever, the ability still happens, and people still run into it thinking that she has to be there for it to happen. So she's a black, a blue, a 2 generic mana for a 4 loyalty mythic legendary planeswalker Tasha. It has a +1 that says until your next turn. That ability just lives out there. Whenever a creature attacks you or Tasha, put a -1/-1 counter on it. It doesn't get -1/-1 to a turn. You put a counter. It is huge. And and Nerd Girl has a literal 3 foot, 4 foot tall version of it because it's sweet. And that, of course, is the Commander Legends, but that's okay. It's an incredible card. So for -2, target opponent puts a creature card of their choice from their graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It gains Ward 2. And for -6, target opponent reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal 3 creature cards. You put those cards onto the battlefield under your control. That player puts the rest into their graveyard. And it's just like every Dimir control player's dream here into Kaito, into Tasha is just ridiculous.
Yeah, I ran into.
Beautiful.
Oh my god! I mean, I've talked about the art before. This is I love. I ran into the fact that this is a 4 mana planeswalker, whereas the original Battle for Baldur's Gate version is a 5 mana planeswalker. That was a rude awakening for me that this was a 4 mana planeswalker, and ultimates in 3 turns and does a very good job at protecting itself. Like, if you have any amount of defense and go +1, this planeswalker's not dying, and then you immediately can get their next 3 creatures and then mill them for 6, maybe 10, right? In limited, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't think you can play against this card in limited and win. I've never won against this card in limited.
Me neither.
I did originally. I don't know what the changes are because I haven't seen it since they changed it. So I don't know. Maybe it's better, but it was fine. It didn't feel like an absolute house, but
Yeah.
was
I mean,
in
any
Commander, though,
planeswalker
right?
sucks.
Well, the commander, the 5-mana one, the Witch Queen, is built for commander, where you get demon tokens and you can draw cards and
yeah.
you mess with the exile zone. This just protects itself. This is just a blue-black planeswalker that's just good
That's
at
really hard to
protecting
get rid of.
itself and stealing your opponent's creatures.
Well, I've played the alchemy version online, but I don't know if she's gotten changed since then in the
Oh.
new alchemy update. And I feel like she was good in limited,
No,
but
she
like,
didn't change. She was
Yeah.
good.
okay.
She changed.
Yeah, she's definitely good, but not unbeatable.
Yeah. I mean, she's not the greatest of all time, but man, she puts a hell of a burden, and it's really difficult to get through.
Yeah.
Ruben, what's number 8?
My number 8 is a card from Jumpstart Historic Horizons that I had a ton of fun with when I was playing with those cards and messing around with things you can do on Arena. And also features art from Magali Villeneuve that, you know, everybody loves Magali, but especially this art immediately got a reaction from a fan base, and that is Kiora the Tide's Fury. Kiora the Tide's Fury is 3 generic and a blue, 4 mana, and only one of it blue for a 4 loyalty Planeswalker Kiora, +1, conjure a card named Kraken Hatchling to your hand, or +1, untap target creature or land, prevent all damage that would be dealt to and by that permanent until your next turn. And then -3, you may sacrifice a Kraken. If you do, create an 8/8 blue Kraken creature token. So the common play pattern here is play this on 4 or 5, protect your +1 to make their best thing not be able to, you know, deal any damage, make it gaseous formed. Then the next turn, either get a Kraken Hatchling or, you know, do some other chicanery with changelings and get yourself an 8/8. Or if it's on an empty board, just +1, put a Kraken Hatchling in your hand, and then the next turn you get one.
My only question is, what's a Kratchen?
Kratchen? Kratchen is a mixture between a Kraken and a Hatchling. I decided that that's the word.
Yeah, they crashing together so well. Yeah, this card is an absolute beating. But you kind of have that one turn. You know, like, okay, they turned off your best threat. You have one turn to do something. Otherwise, it's Kraken and Kraken Hatchling time. And then once you get the Kraken Hatchling, being an 0/4 can be difficult to get through. Playing this, you know, early is also incredibly awesome. And being able to just stop their best thing or have your best thing be a great wall. Like it's not the greatest Planeswalker of all time, but like for what it's doing, it's really fun, it's neat, and you can build some really fun decks with it. So that to me is the line. All right, cool. Nerd Girl, what's number 8?
My number 8 is a card that does it all. It's flavorful, it's playable, it is exactly what you would expect to see in the format that it was created. It's very good. It's well-rounded. I feel like it's not in like the hated colors. It kind of brought a color out of the darkness. And yeah, this is everything you want to see in a Planeswalker in Constructed and in Limited, but also not unbeatable. And we would expect nothing else from the Queen. Lolth Spider Queen, 3 colorless black. We have whenever a creature you control dies, put a loyalty counter on it. No plus ability, only a 0. For 0, you can draw a card, lose a life. -3, create 2/1 black spiders with menace. And -8, you get an emblem with whenever an opponent is dealt combat damage by 1 or more creatures you control. If they lost less than 8 life, they lose 8. You also lose the difference, which is really nice. So insane. I don't think that I've ever done the ultimate, nor have I ever seen anybody ultimate it before. You just make spiders and kill them and get card advantage and then kill them some more. Yeah, this card's amazing.
Making 2 hard to block and good at blocking creatures that you also kind of want to die, like you definitely don't need the ultimate on this card.
No.
The 0 draw card is very good, but you also kind of don't need that either. If you just throw bodies onto the board and you're playing a deck that makes tokens, this thing is just engine and gas all in one.
This card is ridiculous. Like when I play blue black in the current cube, this is like the best card, not close. It's it's an absolute roadblock for whatever your opponent is doing. You have to answer it immediately. You do not want to let them untap with this card. They run away with the game. I think the ultimate is one of like the top 5 worst ultimates on any planeswalker. Like
Sure.
we should do worst ultimates because this one is atrocious.
Write that one down.
I think it's absolutely silly because it's hard to kind of wrap your head around. It seems ridiculous. Why are you doing math? You just most of the time you just die. I've actually had someone run off the ultimate and they just attacked me and I died. And I didn't have to do a lot of math. I was dead. So card is bananas and I love it, but man, that ultimate is not good. Not great.
And Lolth is the Spider Queen. They did an interesting thing with the original Dungeons and Dragons set, where the planeswalkers in the set aren't walkers of planes per se, but they are gods that appear across the Dungeons and Dragons multiverse. So Lolth is behind the Divine Gate and in the God realm, but is worshipped not only on the material plane, but also in the Shadowfell and also in the Nine Hells and other places like that. So similar to other people who can plane shift and walk between worlds, not necessarily a planes walker, but a god qualifies, I think.
Like Lolth and Gandalf and Jace are never going to meet. Like that's not going to happen. There are different things, but you had to be able to put Gandalfs in the world and Lolths in the world and into the game, and not have to make a weird new card type or something. And that's going to continue with Jedi or whoever else they put in there, which should be fun. All right, let's see here. Lolth, the Spider Queen, that is number 8. So for number 7 here, Ruben, what you got?
I've got another Jumpstart Historic Horizons card, which the mechanics of the art is something I'm a little confused by, because when you have I don't want dragon heads for hands. Like Sarkhan Wanderer to Shiv has. Like, I appreciate what they're doing with this art, but this seems horrendously inefficient in terms of what he's doing with his life and his choices. But the card is cool. 3 generic and a red gets you a 4-mana Planeswalker. +1, dragon cards in your hand perpetually gain this spell costs 1 less to cast, and you may pay X rather than pay this spell's mana cost, where X is its mana value. It also has +1 of conjure a Shivan Dragon to your hand, which is cool. And -2, it deals 3 damage to any target. So 4 mana, -2, lightning bolt something, awesome. On an empty board, put a 6-drop 5/5 flyer in your hand, also awesome. If you've already got a Shivan Dragon in your hand, then you can shrink it down to size. A very common play pattern is play Sarkhan on 4, put a Shivan Dragon into your hand. Next turn, use the first +1 ability, shrink it down to 5 mana, and then play it for your turn.
Yeah.
I like Sarkhan as a character. I've always been very underwhelmed with them as a planeswalker.
Yeah.
Like, they don't tend to see a ton of play in Constructed just in general. Like, some fringe play here and there. There was like a Super Friends list that ran a few that turned them all the planeswalkers into things. But in general, that's just using him to make your other planeswalkers better.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, he's still like not the main character, but I feel like he's such a cool character that I really want him to shine more.
For as many Planeswalker cards as Sarkhan has, and they're all just not been that great. Like, whether it's Sarkhan the Masterless in War of the Spark, Sarkhan El Loco, who was fun for a minute but still didn't get there, Sarkhan the Dragon Speaker from Cons still didn't get there, and not to mention, this has to be the most inconvenient, like, dragon hands. The boy's got a itchy nose. What happens?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How's
Burn your face off.
Can't do that. That's not going to work. That's not functional.
Do
How do you eat? How do you...
Have you
you
ever
gotta do
worked
this.
like a fast food restaurant or like a sandwich job?
Oh, where you're gloved
You do
up?
the-
Sure. Yeah.
You're all right,
You
but
do the
they're
thing,
they're
yeah.
scalies. They're probably hot. I don't know.
Well,
A
they've
little
also got
exfoliation never
they've
hurt.
also got eyes and presumably thoughts of their own. Like, that's got to be you wake up in the middle of the night and it's just eating your ear. Like, that's not good. That's not good either.
Either way, let's move over to Nerd Girls number 7. What you got?
I do have a number 7. This is actually my last before 2 hires, but I put the most annoying planeswalker in the history of ever. in my personal opinion. Now, this isn't because it's the most busted. It's not the one people hate. It's not the one that makes people stop playing standard because it's so good. It's just the most annoying because no matter how long it's been out, no matter how many times it's played, no matter how many times I play it, I always forget its static ability. So welcome Narset, partner of the Veils. This 3-mana colorless blue planeswalker says each opponent cannot draw more than 1 card each turn. I have cast infinite card draw spells into this card every time. I will always... That the value in this card is that you just get free value by them wasting their cards. It doesn't even matter.
I cannot tell you the number of times I have cycled and just been like...
Been sad. Yeah.
So that's the static ability. The -2 says, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest into the bottom of your library in a random order. Comes in with 5 loyalties, so you get 2 cards out of this more often than not, unless you miss. But blue players never miss. We all know that.
Bananas. This was Wizards aim for Legacy, and they did not miss.
Yeah, so Legacy and Vintage have been using Narset, obviously, to, and most recently, Echo of Eons with Lion's Eye Diamond, to be able to wheel or time twister, get it off on the same turn, for example, and prevent your opponent from drawing all 7. This plus Leovold in that format has been horrendous. But in Limited, also just like, I hate that, I go, oh yeah, Narset, cool. They put a counterspell in their hand. Awesome. Main phase Chemister's Insight, do nothing. And I'm just like, well, game over, I guess. This is stupid. I hate my life.
I feel like if Narset was a player, they would get DQ'd for ankle shooting.
Yeah.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Like that's just...
All of the Planeswalkers from War of the Spark, all the uncommon Planeswalkers are just like little prison pieces, and each of them in their own unique way sort of sets up a prison element. You got your Dovins, you've got your Teos, like all of them sort of do this thing. It's just that Narset specifically is the one that A, is the best, and B, is the hardest for some reason to wrap your brain around.
It's just, I tell you, I drew a Triome and I was like, cycle Triome, and then like I was like, what? And then across the field, you see it go bloop bloop, and I go, oh my god, up to the corner, concede. Thanks so much. We're done.
Concede out of embarrassment is definitely a move I've done against Narset a bunch.
It's the most annoying planeswalker in the history of ever.
I think I agree.
Well, what we have here for my number 7 is the Planeswalker that lives the most on the second floor, because you need to combo off with Luca Coppercoat Outcast as soon as possible. There's lots and lots of decks that they don't run any actual creatures, just a bunch of token makers and Sarah's Emissary or friends. Any random reanimator target you would like, you can choose. And this Planeswalker goes alongside other spells that let you do this polymorph type thing. Luca Coppercoat Outcast did show up in Ikoria Lair of Behemoths for 2 red and 3 generic mana. It is a 5 loyalty planeswalker with +1, exile the top 3 cards of your library. Creature cards exiled this way gain quote. You may cast this card from exile as long as you control a Luca planeswalker. -2, this is the big one, exile target creature you control, then reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card with higher mana value. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. It's really cute that they're like, oh, this is like Birthing Pod. No, dog, this is just fine, literally any creature.
Yeah.
-7, each creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each opponent, and you don't really care because you want to fire off that middle thing twice and go nuts.
It's a natural order, effectively, or a transmogrify. A lot of decks in Historic have Mutavault effects or make 1/1 Dwarven Mine, right? Like this kind of stuff where you don't have actual creatures in your deck, and then you target it and get a Sarah's Emissary or a Titan of Industry or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I've seen a ton of this in the Transmogrify deck, like you were saying. It's kind of annoying. I feel like it shouldn't do what it does, but here we are. But also, it's not like a big problem. Like, we're not seeing it a ton in the format. It's not oppressive, but it is not fun magic.
Right. Yeah, the current form of that deck uses Indomitable Creativity instead of Luca, but Luca certainly makes life difficult and made life difficult in Standard for sure.
And he lives on the second floor. They wrote a whole song about it. All right. Which, by the way, when you first pointed that out to me back when Ikoria was coming out, I was like, huh? Like, I'd heard the song maybe once or twice or whatever, but never actually really listened to it. And I got obsessed with that song for like weeks.
Amazing.
All right, let's move on here to our number 6. This is where Nerd Girl begins her weight to number 4.
I think I lied. I have a 5.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, even better. Well, that said, you do not have a number 6. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Well, for my number 6, I'm going to bring it up here. Get out of the way. This card is real. This card is proven to be unbelievably annoying. Like this is a card. It's one of those cards that's so annoying that it makes you feel so good when you play it, and it feels so bad to play against it because there's just so many times where it feels like this strangle of inevitability. It's like turtleneck strangle of Obnixilis, the adversary. He's not winning the game, but you ain't winning the game while he's doing his thing, and it drives me nuts. Obnixilis, the adversary, is a red, a black, and a generic mana for a 3 loyalty planeswalker. A mythic from Streets of New Capenna. It has Casualty X, and the copy isn't legendary and has starting loyalty X. So as you cast the spell, you may sack a creature with power of X, and when you do copy the spell, the copy becomes a token. So now you have 2 of this damn thing. For +1, each opponent loses 2 life unless they discard a card, and if you control a demon or a devil, you gain 2 life. For -2, you make one of those devils. You create a 1/1 red devil creature token with, quote, when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target, and those guys are absolutely annoying as hell. And for -7, target player draws 7 cards and loses 7 life. So you kind of got the Gristlebrand action going there. And this thing just, the powerhouse of a teeny, just itty 2 life here and a card there, and the stupid things deal damage on the way out, and they're so hard to get through, and it's absolutely mind-blowing how good this guy is, and it annoys me.
Yeah, it's weird that Rakdos just wants to turtle up and just pin you to death and like rip apart your hand and everything else. It sort of feels like a lantern mechanic as well. We see a lot of I will say that it's really cool that his ability where he sacks a creature when he ETBs to get the secondary one plays very well with the limited format with the blitz mechanic, which is pretty awesome. Also, a really cool interaction I had with this card, again in limited, sorry guys, is Obscura Charm brings this back out of the graveyard. It's a 3 CMC permanent.
Ooh.
So I've done that where I just get to cast infinite of these in my Lona decks, which is really, really fun.
Oh my god. This card's so stupid.
It is not that uncommon to get a 2 mana 3 power creature in red and black. Viashino Riveteer comes to mind. Then there's also things like Skyclave, Shade, and Scrap Heap, Scrounger. There's plenty of things to go around. And then you play this on turn 3, and you've got 2 3 loyalty planeswalkers, one of which can make a 1/1 or both. And then you can +1 the other one and immediately drain 2, gain 2.
Yeah, the number
which
one
is crazy.
The number 1 combo with this one is Tenacious Underdog.
Sure. Yep.
Because
another 3 power, 2 loyalty, or 3 power, 2 mana creature, and that one can obviously come back on turn 4 if you want it.
That's right. And it gets, turn 2, Tenacious, turn 3, smack with Tenacious, play this, casually do the thing, turn 4, blitz it back if you want to, but you don't have to, because at that point you probably got complete control if they're not answering your stupid
or just
Obnixilis.
play discard spells and removal spells. Yeah. It's something that if you're teetering on the edge of like parity, 50-50, even at 3 mana, even later in the game, you can just completely take over. Like this on turn 3, obviously a blowout. This on turn 7, when there's nothing on the board, still kind of a blowout.
Like, yeah, this card just creates inevitability in ways that are like crazy frustrating. And what's weird about this card, I'll stop, I promise, but what's weird about this card is that most of the time, if you just ignore him, you would probably win those games that you try so desperately to kill Obnixilis. I found this both playing as him, I was like, oh my god, if my opponent would just hit me, I'd be dead by now. Or when I play against my opponents and I go, you know what, if I had just swung for their head every time, I probably would have done better.
Sure. It's just tough to race if they've got a devil in play, though.
God, you need trample. Ruben, what's your number 6?
My number 6 is a card that has benefited the most from a change from just an or to an and or. It's a very slight change. It's the only change that was made to this card. Saw basically no play in standard, but there was an update where they buffed this card by adding and / to the or, and that made Nahiri, Heir of the Ancients, much more playable and let you sort of play the Warriors equipment deck. 4 mana gets you a 4 loyalty Planeswalker, +1, make a 1/1 white core warrior creature token. You can attach an equipment you control to it. -2, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a warrior card and or an equipment card from among them and put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, and -3, so you can ultimate it, quote unquote, immediately. It deals damage to target creature or Planeswalker equal to twice the number of warriors and equipment you control.
I had a Nahiri, like I see this card a lot in Brawl, but I'm concerned that they are allergic to making sort of aggro creature-based Planeswalkers good. Because we see a lot of these and they tend to not be super great, and it isn't until you get to the Teferis and even the like Chandras that burn good. But like whenever they seem to deal with other things, they're usually pretty underwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, I want Koth of the Hammer. Like, Koth of the Hammer was a fantastic aggro planeswalker for its time. You know,
I mean, we got Gideon, ally of Zendikar, which was not, I wouldn't say an aggro planeswalker.
I think that scared the hell out of him, quite frankly, because that card was so good, it just took over the entire format.
Yeah.
Like,
I would be remiss if I did not mention that the ultimate there on Nahiri was different. It's warriors and equipment you control, whereas on the printed card from Zendikar, it's only equipment. So you can play a 2-drop, 3-drop, and still use Nahiri here.
Yeah, it felt like they just got so scared, you know, of this, like, you know, God forbid the warrior deck with its equipment, like, be too good. And I can imagine, you know, again, this is one of those things where you go, like, worst case scenario, it is the tier 1 best deck in the format about equipment and turning guys sideways. Like, that's not the worst thing you could be having in any given format. I tried building this deck in Alchemy, you know, after these updates. It's still just kind of a turn too slow, or maybe a loyalty one too few that it needs. But it's still sweet, and I appreciate that most of the Alchemy changes are always buffs and very rarely nerfs.
Yeah.
I did find it weird that this was like the premier character of the set, and it felt so underwhelming as well. Like this was the character that they premiered with the little animated segment, right?
Oh yeah, the story was about her like bouncing
Pretty
around.
strange.
Yeah, it was odd. That said, let's move on here to number 5. Mine is higher on somebody's list, and that is great because it's awesome. Nerd Girl, what's number 5?
My number 5 is a card I'm not a huge fan of. I tend to see different versions of this card or different versions of this character floating around, and they always tend to be very good. But this is one that's made it onto Arena and is seeing a ton of play in arguably one of the best decks. It's just good all around, and a lot of people seem to really enjoy Karn. So we're going to talk about Karn, the Great Creator, 4 mana for a 5 loyalty planeswalker with a static ability, activated abilities of artifacts your opponent's control can't be activated. +1, which nobody really cares about, really. Your until the end of turn, 1 target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature with power and toughness equal to the converted mana cost of the artifact. And then for the -2, which currently mono green is just going off with, is you may choose an artifact card you own from outside of the game, or in exile, reveal it and put it into your hand. So this just lets you get a ton of card advantage, get the best thing for whatever your situation is. This card is an absolute house.
This is my number 10. I love this card. I think this card is incredible. I think the ability to have a toolbox sideboard is awesome. The Great Henge is an artifact after all. And also the fact that if they exile your artifacts, Karn can just get it back from exile, which is kind of amazing. And just sort of gives you the inevitability. You know, like, you know, Meteor Golem is great. And there's like a Pharaoh statue, that 6-mana artifact. God Pharaoh statue is really annoying. And also be very careful with that +1. It's until your next turn. So they can kill it with they can kill whatever you reanimated with sorcery speed removal, and I have definitely animated some of my stuff and been like, oh, they just wrathed.
Right.
Yeah. You can't choose 0.
Karn, the Great Creator, is a very, very good Magic card. Has helped get rid of Mycosynth Lattice in Modern, so has helped a card get banned. And right now, these stupid mono green ramp decks, I hate them. They're so stupid.
They're fun. They're fun, and there's some great mono green. If you want a good deck, there's a great one in the deck building channel in our Discord that you can be a part of our Patreon to be a part of.
There you go.
All right, cool. Ruben, what's number 5?
My number 5 is another of these stupid cards that has a spellbook attached to it from Alchemy Innistrad. But it's the funnest, I think. I've had a blast every time I've played this card because it's just spinning the wheel of destiny, like more than every other spellbook. Every other like random change every game feels different. Tybalt Wicked Tormentor. Every game you play it feels different. 3 generic red gets you a 3 generic or 3 loyalty Planeswalker, which doesn't sound like a deal until you realize it has 2 +1s and a -X. +1 the first, add red and draft a card from Tybalt's spellbook, then exile it until the end of the turn. You can cast that card, and among the cards you can get are things like Torch Fiend, Tybalt's Rager. There are a couple of other 2-drops that you can get out of there. Another +1 is you can deal 4 damage to a creature or planeswalker unless its controller has Tybalt deal 4 damage to them, so a little bit of a browbeat Punisher mechanic there. If they do, you may discard a card, and if you do, draw a card. What a wild ability that is. That ability's bad. I haven't used that ability. That ability's bad. And then -X, make X 1/1 red devil creature tokens. When this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. 5 mana, make 3 devils is actually burn down the house without the haste. So that's not too bad either.
Yeah, this card does like 37 kind of weird, funky things. I think getting back Devil's Play from its spellbook is a big inclusion there.
Yeah.
That helps a lot. Hellrider is another one that's pretty big in terms of what creatures you can get from that spellbook. I know it was definitely a little bit of a head scratcher of just like, why? But I think it plays a lot better than it reads, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I just think Tybalt's a great character.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, he's there just to, like, mess with people and things. So, like, the more he messes with people and things, the more we like him.
We have a lot of lawful evil villains in Magic. We have a lot of, bad guys with plans. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of machinations. And then we've got some uncaring, lawful neutral, or even just true neutral, things like the Eldrazi, just forces of nature that we have to fight against. Mm-hmm. We don't have a ton of chaos. We don't have a lot of the Joker, and that's what Tybalt brings.
I was literally about to say.
You've got to just, sow a little bit of chaos, a little bit of wild, some people just want to watch the world burn action into Magic.
But I think Tybalt's Trickery is, I feel like, where we found the limit. Like, that's enough chaos. That's a little... Sure. That's enough chaos for my life. Yeah. Let's keep it down just a notch. All right, let's move on here to number 4. Ruben, what is your number 4?
Most of my favorite alchemy changes have been to improve cards. This one I like because they've taken it down a notch. Teferi Time Raveler at 3 mana is a bit excessive. 4 mana and bumping it up to 5 loyalty instead of 3 mana and 4 loyalty has done a number of things. First of all, here's what Teferi Time Raveler on Arena does. Your opponents can't cast spells during your turn, as opposed to each opponent can cast spells only at a time that they could cast a sorcery, so they can still do like combat tricks and stuff. Then it's up to 5. It's a 4 mana planeswalker with 5 loyalty. +1 until your next turn, you may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. And -3, return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment to its owner's hand. Draw a card.
A lovely card. I thought this card was great, and I didn't necessarily think it needed to be nerfed or banned or whatever, but that was just me.
I also felt sad when I realized I couldn't Vraska this because I used to be able to Vraska Teferis, and now I can't.
That is a good. That must feel good. It's kind of like Kroll harpooning the goose, right? Like it's just a moral victory. Even if you lose the game, like it's a good feeling. Yeah, and Teferi is that same sort of goose annoyance.
It's just so damn good. It seems weird because this isn't the type of card that you would show off. Even the printed version that had issues. This is the type of card you would show off to somebody and be like, look how awesome Planeswalkers can be. Look how powerful. They're like, it bounces a thing. Yeah. You can play stuff whenever. Okay. But those two abilities plus the static ability just turned into such issues dealing with it. It was absolutely incredible.
Infinite cosmic power. Itty bitty living space. Everything's great when it costs 3 mana.
It's true. So that card was fantastic. Nerd Girl, what is your number 4?
My 4 and 3 are my 2 last hires.
Oh, well, that's a bummer. Number 4 and number 3. That's okay. I'll finish out our number 4 here with a hell of a Magic card. This card is absolutely bananas. This card is, I don't know if mistake. I don't know if we need to use the M word, right? I don't know if it was a mistake. Big, flashy, awesome Magic cards should exist, and they have a spot. But there's always that question that makes you feel really weird when it's colorless, when it's all, it can go in any deck, any commander deck, any brawl deck, whatever, anything you want with Ugin the Spirit Dragon. 8 mana is a lot of mana. But this is a hell of a lot of a Planeswalker you're getting for it. For 8 generic mana, it is a 7 loyalty legendary Planeswalker Ugin. Originally showed up in M21, Core Set 2021. It has +2. It deals 3 damage to any target, so there's Ghostfire. For -X, you exile each permanent with converted mana cost X or less. That's 1 or more colors. That's the Game Ender, by the way. That's the one where they do the scoopsies. And for -10, if you ever get there, congratulations, you gain 7 life. You draw 7 cards. You put up to 7 permanent cards from your hand onto the battlefield. This is while your opponent is clicking the concede button, because that's what they're doing. Or they're just putting all their cards back in the deck box. Say thanks.
This is my number 6.
Nice.
I don't like this card. I feel like it kind of, anytime a card can completely turn a game from 100% loss to a win and discredit everything that has happened thus far in the game, is sad days.
It's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
This is a card. Yeah, I mean, you guys both said it. I've never had. There are very few cards where I go, well, I'm 99% to win, but the 1% that I am to lose, I can't ever win against Ugin, and then they just have Ugin. -6, clear your Titans off the board and all of your elves and all of the things you've ever done. Leave all your opponents with their mana rocks and everything is crazy. And then they can just start +2ing and bolting everything that you play for the rest of the game.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I misspoke there. It originally showed up in Fate Reforged, didn't show up. Yeah. Oh, nice. And it most recently showed up in M21.
In M21, it was egregious because in Fate Reforged, something sort of kept it back. It didn't have as big of an impact when it first came out. And then in the core set M21, it really was egregious, especially in Limited, but also for about the first month of Standard. It was all these green ramp decks, man. I'm telling you. They're a problem, and I won't stand for it.
Well,
I actually don't hate green ramp decks. I hate green ramp decks that do nothing. The current one that we have in Explorer right now is like the do nothing and then win.
Yes.
When your opponent has no interaction. I feel like that's bad. I like ramp into big stompies and then proceed to crush your opponent. I like that. This I'm not a huge fan of.
Yeah, this card is just so it's crushy in a way that like a Wrath of God is not. It's crushy in a way that,
it's a Wrath of God that leaves behind a God Planeswalker.
Yeah, a crazy threat that you're going to lose to.
I appreciate that they made this so powerful because Ugin is supposed to be powerful. I appreciate that they did this. And I just don't want them to do it again.
I mean, again, if that -X had been like exile each non-enchantment permanent or non-artifact permanent, or just give me just a little bit of hope, because damn, it just turns games off. All right, let's move on here to number 3. Ruben, you are the only person with a number 3.
They introduced 3 new keywords in Jumpstart Historic Horizons, and Freyalise Skyshroud Partisan had all 3 of them and featured them in a really interesting and powerful package. Freyalise Skyshroud Partisan is a generic green for a legendary Planeswalker Freyalise with 4 loyalty. That says +1 untap up to 1 target elf, that elf, and a random elf creature card in your hand perpetually get +1/+1. -1, seek an elf card, which puts a random elf from your deck into your hand. And -6, conjure a card named Regal Force onto the battlefield.
I have a soft spot for elves. This was my number 10.
Nice.
Elves is one of the first cards I made as a kid, or I took all my green cards and spread them out, and I had a bunch of well-wishers and silly things that like pump XX, where X is the number of elves. So just in general, I have a deep love of it. And anytime you're turning creatures sideways, I feel like that's fair, good, clean magic. And I like that they specifically targeted the elves here. And again, it makes for a healthy limited format when the planeswalkers aren't super busted.
This Planeswalker is, I don't know if I call it busted, but turn 2 with Llanowar Elves and now Elvish Mystic, this card is a house. And
It is.
to be able to untap an elf to get more mana, to make your elves larger, to go find elves for you. This was my number 9. This card is absolutely incredible and super duper powerful. I mean, it definitely felt like this was the card that they're like, this is going to be for the constructed players. It is as low as about they can make it cost. It's super duper good, and basically all the points of the game because it helps you go find you more elves if you need it. And for those who don't know, Regal Force is a 7-mana 5/5, and when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card for each green creature you control. So let's go. Frey Elise is awesome. All right, let's move on here to our number 2, Nerd Girl. What's your number 2?
So for my top 2 spots, I tried to think of cards that have kind of taken over formats that were staples, that continue to see play, that, you know, were a problem. If you can't beat this planeswalker, what are you doing? This deck is not a playable deck, right? And I feel like that is the exact definition of what the Wandering Emperor has done to the current format. If you can't beat an Emperor, your deck is not playable. This is a 4-mana, 2-colorless, white legendary planeswalker. Comes into play with 3 loyalty. It has flash. As long as the Wandering Emperor entered the battlefield this turn, you may activate her loyalty abilities as though they were an instant. +1, you can put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 creature. It gains first strike till end of turn. -1, make a 2/2 samurai creature token with vigilance. -2, exile target tapped creature. You gain 2 life. This is doing all of the things, and the format has sort of developed around you're either playing Emperor or you're beating Emperor, and there's no middle ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the most perfectly designed planeswalkers in recent memory, because they used a lot of design space in planeswalkers early on with these generic good stuff planeswalkers, Gareth Wildspeaker, Jace Beleren, Elspeth. Yeah. It didn't feel like you could have a mono-color aligned planeswalker that was just generically doing good stuff. And this does. And on a completely different axis than any other planeswalker we've ever seen.
Yeah, this card was my number 5. This card, like the Wandering Emperor, is going to be a force to be reckoned with for a very, very long time. The fact that it's good when you're attacking, and it's good when you're behind, and it's gaining you life when you're behind. It's creating blockers for itself that you can pump later. Those blockers have vigilance, so they can still get in for a swing. Like, just every which way, the flash thing, and you can use the abilities as though they have flash. Like, it's just so sweet. It's surprising. It's exciting. It's powerful. It's like, it's just the perfect power level, and that is so hard to do. Like, this is like a hat trick of a planeswalker.
Absolutely. One interesting little tidbit is that this is, as far as I know, the only planeswalker with a card type. Normally it says legendary planeswalker Vivian, but we don't know the Wandering Emperor's name, so it doesn't say legendary planeswalker the Wandering Emperor, but it's usually like their given name, which we don't know, I guess. Right?
Correct.
Nice.
Kind of cool.
That's awesome.
And in the lore of Kamigawa, neither does she. So all of the Wanderer cards have no planeswalker type.
Yep. And be like, oops, it's Liliana's child from a different timeline.
Sure. They're leaving themselves open to be able to tell that story if they want to.
Yeah, there's no, like, it is the coolest thing. Like, it's not good, but it is definitely a cool story hook of a planeswalker who cannot control their planeswalking abilities.
Yep.
So, very, very cool. Ruben, what's number 2?
My number 2 is a gnome bard. and she's very cute.
Mm.
And I appreciate what they tried to do with her, and I just wanted to shout it out. And they made her slightly better in an arena update. So if you're trying to ultimate Eliwick Tumblestrum, it only takes you 3 turns. Eliwick Tumblestrum is 2 generic, 2 green mana for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. Eliwick. +1 venture into the dungeon, which is you can enter the first room or advance to the next room of one of the various myriad sundry dungeons that they came out with in Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. -2. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature from among them and put them in your hand. If it's legendary, you gain 3 life. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And -6, you get an emblem with creatures you control have trample and haste and get +1/+2 or +2/+2 for each differently named dungeon you've completed. So a lot of really interesting stuff going on there. Unfortunately, the numbers didn't really play out. They tried to buff up a bunch of the dungeon cards in white, black, and green, and then the white-black dungeon deck ended up winning the next Mythic Championship, I think, but green sort of got left out in the cold. Unfortunate for Eliwick.
I will say it's one of my favorite arts from the D&D set. She's got the little happy frog. It's like a very plain bard character, which I felt like was very, very cool to show off. A lot of the D&D stuff did do a lot of that really cool art, but this is one of the best characters that I felt like really embodied the set.
It's wild because like it's not just like white black venture into the dungeon is better. If you add a color to it, you go white black blue. You don't even go back into green. And if you were, it would be super difficult to sort of splash this planeswalker. If anything, I think having this be a green and 3 generic mana instead of green 2 generic mana would be way better than that little tiny one tweak to the ultimate, because you know how much ultimates matter in like game to game play with planeswalkers, which is like 1 in 20 games or something. Like, affect some other stats would be nice. For my number 2, this is definitely where I'm like format defining. You need to know that this exists. You are playing with it sometimes or against it, depending on if you see that color, you can expect to see these things. And there's no planeswalker that's really dropped it from the top rope sort of ever since Wonder Nymph and even Kaito in some ways. But damn, Chandra Torch of Defiance is a real one. That's
my number 3.
Yeah, she is nuts. And it's another Magali, which is awesome. A 4 option planeswalker, which is also kind of rare. Less so these days, but it used to be a crazy big thing. Chandra Torch of Defiance did show up as a mythic rare in Kaladesh for 2 red, 2 generic mana. It is a 4 loyalty planeswalker. Chandra, you guys have a type. +1, you exile the top card of your library. You may cast that card, and if you don't, she deals 2 damage to each opponent. +1, you add 2 red. -3, she deals 4 damage to target creature. -7, you get an emblem with quote. Whenever you cast a spell, this emblem deals 5 damage to target creature or player. These days, it deals it to any target. But regardless, Chandra is just bonkers and crazy good, and bonkers crazy good.
Yeah.
Yep. This was my number 3. It's a card that's seeing, it was very good in standard. It's very good still, right? Like I just bought a playset of these, and I believe they're in the neighborhood of like $20 to $22 a piece, which is quite impressive for a card that's not, in standard. A lot of planeswalkers don't make it this far. So well-rounded. Also just kind of a fan favorite character, which is important to note. So.
Yeah. Chandra Torch of Defiance was a standard all-star and has seen play all the way back to Legacy. If you play, sort of those Ancient Tomb red decks, Chandra sees play all the way back there. Just a great card, was a staple of a dozen different archetypes. That's the signature of a spectacular planeswalker.
Wizards, it took many years, but they finally figured out that Red's ability to have card advantage was to not give it card advantage, was to give it, well, maybe. If you get it, you exile it, and you might be able to play it, depending on what's going on. That's the best way to handle it. All right, let's move on here to number 1. Nerd Girl, what's number 1?
All right, so similar to my number 2, what defined a format? What made people either play the card or tune a deck to beat the card, which is usually not a great thing to do because then you're just kind of weak against everything else that's also kind of tuned to beat the card, I guess. This is the reason I picked this as number 1 over the Wandering Emperor is because I feel like nobody's clamoring to ban the Wandering Emperor, whereas I feel like this card was so oppressive that people hated it and wanted it gone. And we're going to talk about Nissa, Who Shakes the World. This 5 mana, 3 colorless, green Planeswalker comes into play with 5 loyalty. This is whenever you tap a forest for mana, add an additional forest. That's just the static ability. That is not the plus for the turn, which would probably be fine. The plus ability is put 3 +1/+1 counters on a target non-creature land you control. Untap it, and then turn it into an elemental with vigilance and haste until, and then it's also still a land. So you can use your land for twice as much mana, then turn it into a creature, then beat them, and it has vigilance, so you can then use the mana again. And then we've got -8 says you get an emblem with lands you control have indestructible. Search your library for any number of forests. Put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. This is insane.
It's a hell of a Magic card. This is my number 3.
It's absurd.
This card just like, it was a meteoric bomb. One of the best cards in War of the Spark in the entire set that helped define Standard. She was in Standard from the moment she showed up to the moment she left. She still sees plenty of play in Historic and Explorer decks, and she probably will. Like, it's a mana doubler. It's a mana doubler that makes threats, and that's nuts.
Yeah. You know how we always complain about Teferi Hero Dominaria, how it's secretly a 3 mana Planeswalker? Well, guess what? Turns out Nissa also 3 mana, sometimes 0 mana, like sometimes netting you mana, depending on what turn of the game it is. I've definitely seen games where, you know, you tap like your 3 mana rocks, tap 2 forests, and then you just have more mana than you started the turn with. Much less if you get to untap and, you know, hard cast a 10 mana spell from your hand.
Oh, Kozilek or whatever, Ulamog. Oops. Yeah, that's what you can do. That's what this enables you to do, is really dumb, powerful, scary things, and she brings the fear. That's good. Ruben, what's number 1?
My number 1 has the best sentence, the best rules text sentence on any Magic card that has ever been conceived. Because it doesn't share this mechanic with any other Magic card. This appears nowhere else in the history of Magic. I just love that you have to accept offers and conditions on Davriel Soulbroker. Davriel Soulbroker is 2 generic black for a 4 loyalty legendary Planeswalker Davriel. +1 until your next turn. Whenever an opponent attacks you and or Planeswalkers you control, they discard a card. If they can't, they sacrifice an attacking creature. It's pretty good for protecting itself. I'm going to skip down to the bottom here. -3, target creature an opponent controls perpetually gets -3/-3. So if your opponent only has 1 creature on the board, this can kill it and stick around. Very cool. We're here for the -2. We're not here for anything else. We're here to accept one of Davriel's offers, then accept one of Davriel's conditions. And those can be any number of positive and negative effects, from whenever you draw a card, you gain some life, return random creatures from your graveyard to your hand. Those are good things, right? Or at the cost, but also at the cost of you lose 6 life, or you sacrifice 2 permanents, or, you know, every spell you cast costs a black more to cast for the rest of the game.
It's a fun thing. I liked the idea of the Soul Broker. I think it's super flavorful and unique.
I think that they really missed the boat by not calling it terms and conditions. I will die on this hill. I think it would be way better if you accept one of his terms and accept one of his conditions, because memes? I don't know. It just seems funnier. I don't know.
It is. I mean, it's a meme, right? Like, I mean, offer condition, I think, is fine.
It's fine.
If anything, I would have them change condition to, you know, price or cost or something else that is not a Magic term already. Is what
also, isn't a term usually the thing that goes along with the offer?
Right.
So
a
it's
term
sort of
is
like
is a synonym for a condition.
Yes.
So it would have needed to be offer then term.
Offer in terms.
Offer in terms. Yes. Fine. Y'all ruined my super fun meme idea.
Sorry.
It's fine. Me, I'm being I am being the most basic that basic can be, which I'm guessing Nerd Girl is number 4 through process of elimination. You got to give it up for the Planeswalker that runs the formats. The Planeswalker that, sinks a little bit, the heart sinks a little bit. It's an excellent example of someone's favorite card is someone's most hated card. I definitely don't like playing against this card, but I love playing with this card. And there's only one Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, and he sits atop his throne. For a blue, a white, and 3 generic mana, it is a 4 loyalty Mythic Planeswalker from Dominaria. So let's hope the new Dominaria Planeswalkers are good. No pressure. Has +1, draw a card. At the beginning of the next end step, untap up to 2 lands. -3, put target non-land permanent into its owner's library, 3rd from the top. And -8, you get an emblem with quote, whenever you draw a card, exile target permanent and opponent controls. And mother of God, this thing is casually 3 mana, kind of, sorta. It puts the shields back up for you. It answers any non-land permanent that you don't like. Its ultimate is actually attainable. And it scares me greatly, and that's what I got.
Teferi can go tuck himself.
That's right.
You tell
Yeah,
me.
Teferi's, it was the card of the year for Magic Mike's, and then it was the art of the year in the Black is Magic last year. So we've talked about Teferi, the hero of Dominaria, the only card that says the word Dominaria on it other than the mending of Dominaria. And, when you're the hero, that comes with a lot of baggage. So the fact that this card is good is good. Would you want to see this card verbatim just reprinted in the new standard?
Lord God, no, please.
Okay.
Nope.
No. We lived through the one time, and let me tell you, one time is enough. This card
One
is
time's
just
enough. All right.
This card is so good. This card is so
It is.
powerful. This is just like, I don't want him to reprint Jason to standard ever. We lived through that format. He warped everything around him after Bloodbraid Elf left, and that was like what we had for years. And then we didn't have it anymore. So it's important. But and this was your number 4, Nerd Girl, is that right? Yeah, our number 4. Fantastic. All right, well, that was our top 10 Planeswalkers on Arena. You'll see them right now on the screen for your review. Take a look at my list, Nerd Girl's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win $50 worth of anything at CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Nerd Girl.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you. This was fun.
Yeah, it was neat. As we move on here to our final slide. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. There we go. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsors, CardHoarder.com and AltarSleeves.com, my co-hosts, MTG Nerd Girl and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv at Magic Mikes, on Twitter at Magic Mikes Cast, our Magic Mikes subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.